Work anxiety. Seriously. Being a human is hard enough, but sometimes I feel like being a woman in tech is just that much harder. This week on Organized Chaos, we are going to do something just a little bit different. Over the last couple of weeks, I have asked you all across LinkedIn and Instagram to give me the biggest questions that you have about managing your mental health at work. And oh my God, did you deliver? How do you go about managing your career and your personal life all at once? My coworkers work all the time, but I want to take friggin' lunch. How do I go about doing that? I'm scared of getting fired. What do I do? That was just the tip of the iceberg. This week, I want to answer all of those questions and more for you, so let's jump right into it. Welcome back to Organized Chaos. My name is Regan, and I am so very, very happy that you all are here. It is officially fall in Amsterdam. I'm in a sweater, which is unheard of for me right now. My hair is up. We are just trying to get back into routine. I've been reading things about October theory lately, and I am fascinated to see if anyone else has had this come up on their social media platforms, because it's a really interesting concept that in the last 3 months of the year, you can actually get so much more done than you can throughout the rest of the year. So please let me know how you're feeling about it being October. My fall decor is going to come out. I think I said that in last week's episode, but I haven't totally had a chance yet to get it all out and on my couch and around and all the pumpkins and everything, but it's happening. It's happening. And if you want to follow along on that storyline of my life, please follow on Instagram. I'm probably going to be documenting a good amount there and or TikTok, but most of it will end up going in the stories. So that is all to say that I am in a little bit of a reflective mood. And as such, I wanted to get really real with you all about mental health at work, because you know that I started Organized Chaos because I'm angry that mental health isn't talked about more at work. When we do talk about it, we talk about it in this like high level way of, oh my goodness, take care of yourself, take time off, do your thing, work-life balance. But a lot of it is just positioning. A lot of it is signaling to people that we care about mental health, but we're not really going to help you when the going gets tough. Now, some of that I can understand from a company perspective, but that's why I think you absolutely need mentors, need coaches, need therapists who have had experience in tech. And so I got you. If you don't have someone else in your life like that, I got you. Even if you do, listen into this episode. Let me know as you're listening to the different questions and answers how you would answer each one of them, because confidence, reducing your anxiety, all of this is so unique and special to you. I'm so curious about how you would handle each individual question that I'm going to go ahead and answer. Now, I'm also going to add a little bit of my own personal experience into all of this. Actually, that's a really good place for us to start. Let me tell you a little bit of a story, because I want to get real with you about my own mental health at work. I don't want to shy away from the conversation so that you know you are not alone. Because 1 in 4 people will experience some sort of mental health crisis in a year. And crisis can mean whatever it means to you. Don't let anyone tell you what crisis should or does mean. But 1 in 4 people, if you are sitting in a room and you look to your left, you look to your right, like somebody nearby you is going to also experience a mental health crisis in that same year. And so this is something that impacts all of us. It's something that the conversation needs to be had around. We need to be open about what's going on with our mental health, because the idea that we're separating work from life, like you all know, I don't believe in work-life balance. I think it's unattainable. I think that work and life need to end up going hand in hand. I think there's a huge opportunity as to how you decide to build your own career and your life. And this aspect of mental health builds right on into that. Because if you think that I am not bringing the grief, the trauma associated with losing a parent, with losing a sibling, with divorce, with all of these other aspects of my life and your life into my day-to-day work, like, you crazy. That's just not happening. Of course you are bringing all that in, and we should be allowed to be these formed human beings, but sometimes work just wants to shut that all down. Like, how many times have you heard, don't bring your personal life to work? And that's near impossible unless you are a cyborg, which I am not. So I'll take a step back, as I always do. I'm digressing here a little bit. I'll tell you a story. So in 2022, I quit the big tech job with really no backup. I was so burnt out, but nobody knew it. I hadn't had that conversation with anyone. So when I started to quit, when I told people, hey, this is what's happening and I'm putting my notice in, there were a lot of like blank stares, like, oh my God, jaws hitting the floor. I had no idea that you were even thinking of leaving. What are you going to go and do next? Because that's the assumption. People think that you're going to have this thing set up for the future. And that made sense, but I would shy away from that question because I didn't want to answer it. I was hiding from the fact that I was so burnt out. I was like, please just get me out of this conversation. I can't wait to leave. And nobody should end up that way. Nobody should end up with having multiple panic attacks a day. Nobody should end up with feeling so much anxiety around presenting in a meeting that you just totally clam up. But that's the situation that I was in. I was exhausted. I was sleeping all the time. I was crying all the time. Not all of it was because of work, but a very high percentage of it was because I had, quote, paid my dues. I was trying to be so perfect. I was trying to work the 80-hour work weeks. I was trying to exercise. I was trying to maintain my health. I was trying to eat a good diet. I was trying to be a certain weight. I was trying to be in a certain relationship. I was trying to get promoted. I had made it by all accounts. When people looked at my resume, they were like, oh, you made it to leading the EMEA marketing team at this tech unicorn. That's amazing. That's awesome. You've only been in tech for 10 years, or you've only been in your career for 10 years. How did you go about doing that? But on the inside, I just felt like this fire was raging. And that is what I want to help all of you limit, because you can do what I did without the burnout alongside it. It is possible to live a life where you're actually excited about going to work in the morning. And I know that a lot of people say this and you kind of roll your eyes and you're like, that's not true. There's no way that's happening for me. No, like that's absolutely possible. But the difference is you have to intentionally decide what is and what is not important to you, because you won't be able to get everything done. That is a lesson I wish that younger Regan knew, but alas, we're here. I wouldn't have been here without that experience. So here we go. Before I answer these questions, I wanted to add one quick little plug into it, which I don't think I've announced on this channel before, but I am officially training to become a life coach, which I'm so excited about as a next step in my organized chaos journey. I want to be able to help as many of you as possible, and I need to learn some of the fundamentals in order to do that. And because of that, one very fun note is I'm actually opening up my calendar to free intro sessions with me. So free 30-minute chats. I haven't totally decided what I'm going to call them yet. So if you do have a thought on that, please let me know. If they're going to be, I don't know if they're going to be big sister chats. I don't know if they're going to be like soundboarding chats, like something. I am going to be your soundboard, your confidant, your coach, somebody who helps you get from point A to Z, and I'm going to hold your hand while we get there together. And so if you would like to be a part of these free intro sessions with me, they're going to be 30 minutes each. I'm going to put the link in the description box. And if not, that's totally cool. Here we go for the rest of the episode. Okay, so one of the first questions I have, and remember, I had so many different questions that I needed to filter through. I can't remember how many I chose, but I chose a handful that I thought would be the most helpful to you. If there are more pressing questions that you have, I can do another round of these episodes again in the future. So please drop them in the comments. Let me know, send me a DM, send me a message. I know that it's not always comfortable to put them publicly out into the universe. So you can always send me a private message and we can chat there on these specific questions. But this is what I'm going to start with, and we can always move on from there. So the first question I have is, what the hell do I do if I have Sunday scaries every single weekend? Now, Sunday scaries and I have a very special relationship with one another. I used to have Sunday scaries every single weekend. I stand by this, that company culture is dictated by how employees feel on Sunday nights. So the company culture may be to blame for your Sunday scaries, and that is not okay. There are toxic workplaces everywhere where you know in your gut that it is toxic because of the Sunday scaries that you have every single weekend. If you're scared that your manager is going to start yelling at you, if you're scared that you're going to receive pings the second you get back to the office, if you just hate your job and hate the place that you're working at, that is a clear indicator that you might not be at the best job for you. Now, there are a couple different ways to handle this. I know that when my Sunday scaries were at an all-time high, it was because I could not separate work from life. I could not create boundaries that were necessary in between work and life. And so I would just think about work in the background all the time. I know I said earlier on in the episode that it is impossible to split work from life, which is true, but it is not impossible to have the boundaries put into place so that you can still go and live your life without the stress of work just always sitting on your shoulder. I read something really interesting on TikTok the other day, which I know we all pretend like we don't read things on TikTok and don't learn things from TikTok, but like I absolutely did. And I can't remember the creator, but she was saying that she hates this idea of waking up for work. Like I know so many of us, I used to do this. I would just wake up, kind of roll over, get out of bed, put on an outfit, and just go and sit in front of my computer and my day would start. But I hated that. And she hated that too. And so she decided instead of waking up for work, she's going to wake up for something else. She started waking up for breakfast, for reading, for working out, for spending time with her kids, I think. But she added another reason into her life for getting out of bed in the morning that wasn't revolved around work. And I loved that. I loved this idea that we don't have to be this corporate robot. And instead, even though we might be working a 9 to 5, even though we might still be at this job that we don't totally love, you can start to trick your brain almost into living life for you and not for somebody else, because that's the biggest thing. I feel like when I was deep in Sunday scaries, I would sit on Sunday nights and like just kind of freeze. And I think so many of you probably do the same thing. I would freeze. I would just watch TV. I would try so hard not to think about the week ahead that I would end up anxietying myself, if that's a word, into this hole. And what really helped was when I could start to set specific time for me to think about what's going to happen in the week ahead. How am I going to plan this? Now, of course, it all got better when I actually started working in a role, which is what I'm doing now, that I actually love to do. And so Sunday nights are much less scary for that reason. But if you find yourself having the deepest Sunday scaries every single weekend, set yourself a schedule. Give yourself time where you can think about work on a Sunday evening, but then only hold it to just that 30 minutes, hold it to that hour. Don't allow yourself to overthink about it. And that can be easier said than done. And the second step is going to be take a look at what your work-life boundaries are. What do those boundaries look like? Are you responding to people on a Saturday and a Sunday via ping? Are people asking you for things and you're still giving them those things on the weekend or late at night after the workday is finished? Because if you're just working 24/7, well, of course you're going to have Sunday scaries, because that's just going to start all over again when you get back into the office on Monday morning. Take a look at those boundaries. I can tell you your at least life, your morning, your agency, your intentionality over how you are living is going to get 10 times better. All right, the next question that we have is, have you ever doubted your career path? And the answer is so easy. Yes, absolutely. I have doubted my career path before. And I think everybody has. I think everybody who's been in a position of leadership, especially that I have talked to in the past, has doubted their career path at some moment in time. But I haven't doubted what I am doing necessarily. But every single time I have doubted my career path, it's led me towards the right direction. Now, I find doubt can come in two different ways. It can either be you are doubting, am I in the right role because I hate this role? Or you can be doubting it because you're a little bit afraid and there's imposter syndrome coming in, but it's still the right thing for you. Now, you're the only one who's going to be able to really sit down and decide for yourself what the answer is. I was having a conversation with someone earlier today, and she was saying that she just didn't know which direction she wanted her life to go in, and she felt like she was doing the wrong thing. And so I asked, do you feel like you're doing the wrong thing because you hate it? Or do you feel like you're doing the wrong thing because it's scary and you're not sure you're ready to deal with that fear? And that question is so important, because if you are just dealing with imposter syndrome, now I hate to even just say just, because it's not like it's an easy thing. It's not just an easy thing. But if you're dealing with imposter syndrome, then maybe that is vulnerability that you are willing to push through. But if you are dealing with something like the Sunday scaries, that tells me that your career path may need a little bit of a tweak to it. So think about that for yourself. Studies show that 82% of people experience imposter syndrome at work. And I'm sure that number even goes higher for women. So many of us are experiencing imposter syndrome. I remember when I first got moved into my first management job, and I woke up the night before I had one of my first team members onboarding, and I sat there and I was like, I can't believe I just hired this person. I don't know why I hired them. Not because they weren't amazing, because they were, but because I just don't feel like I'm ready to manage. Maybe this is stupid. Maybe this is silly. Maybe I could have done everything on my own. I didn't actually need to bring someone on board for this. And these are all thoughts that are going through my head as I'm laying in bed that morning. Now, that's a pretty mean way to talk to yourself, right? This is stupid. This is silly. I can't believe I did this thing and wasted everyone's time. It ended up being the best decision, because the only way that I was going to be able to start taking on more responsibility at my job was by actually hiring someone. But had I sat there and allowed myself to be consumed by the fear, by the self-doubt, by the imposter syndrome just raging in my head, then I would have never stepped into this new level of responsibility. I wouldn't be here in front of you, that's for damn sure, because I found out that managing people, that leading a team is something I absolutely love to do. And then I turned that around to, well, why do I love doing it? And it's because I love focusing on what people are working on. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What do they want to work on? What don't they want to work on? Who are they as a human being? And that has led me to coaching. So no matter what, there are going to be things that you can learn from the moments where you are the most afraid. There is a difference between knowing in your gut that you are in the wrong place and having the anxiety that maybe this isn't for you. Now, knowing in your gut, I like to say, is you not being somewhere that you should be. And that's solid. That feels firm. in your system. You'll think about it and go, yeah, no, this is just definitely not something I want to do. Now, if it's anxiety, if it's fear, if it's self-doubt, if it's imposter syndrome, that's going to feel a lot more chaotic. I found it's like the butterflies times 10, and it's not going to feel comfortable, but you are going to know, hey, this is something that I can deal with. And you are going to need to make that decision for yourself, how long you are willing to deal with it. Okay, the next question that I have on the list, we're just churning right through them, is I keep getting anxious in the middle of meetings to the point where I stop talking. What can I do? Now, when I read this question, I was like, this definitely needs to go on here because this is exactly what I was dealing with. And there's so many ways that I could go about answering this question. But the story that I will give you is that when I had a very toxic boss come on board. Now, this is a boss who was so narcissistic that he came on and just started to make changes the second that he joined the team. And we know that a leader should not take the jar and immediately shake it up. A leader is meant to sit. I might be an expert in my own focus area, but you all are an expert on the company that you've worked in. Let me take a look at what you've done. Let me try to give you some advice here and there, but I'm not going to confirm my opinion until I've at least been here for a couple of months and can truly understand why you've done what you've done. Well, this leader did not do that. Instead, he started to put people on the spot. He started firing people very quickly, where it felt like every single time you had a conversation with him, your head was on the chopping block. He would talk down to you. He would talk down to your teams in front of you, away from you, to you. He was just not a good manager to be around. Now, I say all that because I know that my manager was a big reason as to why I was so anxious. And so that might be a similar reason for you. It's not always your fault that you're so anxious. Now, you can do something about it so you are able to find the solution, and the solution might be a number of things, but don't think that it's just because you're an anxious person that you might be feeling this way, because I am a generally anxious person, but I love public speaking. I love talking. And so going into a meeting and being concerned, being anxious, feeling like I couldn't talk anymore, that was just a weird experience for me. And I knew, going back to the in your gut, like knowing in your gut, it's a lot stronger, it's a lot firmer, it's a lot more solid, and being anxious about something, it's a lot more chaotic. I knew in my gut, because it was pretty solid, that this is somewhere I just can't be anymore. This is not a conducive environment for me, not a psychologically safe environment for me. So that's what I will say first. If you feel like the anxiety is just overwhelming you, I want you to take a look at, is this somewhere that you should be staying, and is this somewhere that you should not be staying anymore? Now, sometimes that anxiety can come from imposter syndrome, in which case I would go back to my answer in the previous question and talk through how do we work through that imposter syndrome? Where is that self-doubt coming from? Do you not feel like you know exactly what you're doing? Because you know that you wouldn't have been put in the role that you're in unless they knew that you could do it. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that if you're listening to this, you are a high achieving, highly anxious, highly productive women in tech who is either a people pleaser or a recovering people pleaser, in which case I know that you are doing the best that you can do. And so if you are finding yourself being so anxious, so wound up when you go into these meetings that you just feel like everything blocks out, there are ways that you can work through that, but you don't need to be so anxious. People love what you do. People are so excited to hear from you. And so remember that they want to learn from you, and you have the ability to teach them something. The question that I often like to ask myself if I get super anxious before going into a meeting is, what evidence do I have? Now, my therapist uses this all the time, so a quick little like therapy with Regan session. But what evidence do you have? If you're sitting there and saying, everyone's bored by me, no one wants to listen to me, everyone's annoyed that I'm even talking, what evidence do you have? How do you know that? I guarantee you, if you start walking through this exercise, you are going to comfort yourself and find that you actually don't have a lot of evidence to support this idea that people don't want to talk to you. People actually want to hear what you're saying. That's why they invited you into the meeting. As long as you're brief, as long as you're succinct, as long as you don't ramble on, there's no reason for them to not want to hear from you. So remember that the next time you're in a meeting and all of a sudden that self-doubt and that anxiety overwhelms you and you're like, I can't talk anymore. Take 2 deep breaths, maybe 3. What evidence do you have that they don't want to talk? What evidence do you have that they don't want to listen? And what evidence do you have that you don't know what you're talking about? And I'm sure there's very, very little, if anything. Okay, we are just plowing through all of these questions. I'm going to answer one more before we get to the very end. So make sure you stick around for this one, because this is a big one that I feel like we as women especially get judged for quite often, but I see it happen every single day. And the question is it ever okay to cry at work? And my answer is yes, absolutely, kinda. So yes, absolutely, because you are a human with emotions. Of course you are allowed to cry at work. If anyone's telling you you can't have emotions at work, they are toxically positive, it sounds like, and don't want you to have any sense of emotions and or a couple different things, but I don't want to label anyone. Regardless, go back and listen to my episode on having a toxic boss and then also when you know it's time to quit your job, because both of those episodes are going to be really helpful in deciphering whether or not the place that you're in is somewhere that you want to continue to be, but also I think just validating that sometimes work sucks. Sometimes work is so stressful. Sometimes all we can do is cry. Now, my suggestion is don't be characterized by crying, because your manager and your teammates, they're not your therapist. And so listen to me when I say that. They're not your therapist. They're not meant to be sitting there and listening to you and talk to you about like what triggers you and what doesn't trigger you. You are an adult in the corporate world. This is a choice that you've made, but also they need to be empathetic. And so a manager is supposed to listen to you. If you've had a dick yell at you for no apparent reason, a stakeholder of yours start yelling at you or talking down to you, and you need help working through that. That is exactly where a manager is supposed to be. So if you are crying at work, don't think that it's the end of the world. It's showing that this is a really, really important problem for you and you want to figure out how to solve that problem. But if you become characterized as somebody who constantly cries, I worry that you will become characterized as the girl who cries wolf. And now there's a difference, because there are workplaces that just don't want any kind of emotion, but you will know in your heart if you are crying a little bit too much. If you're just crying over everything, then I want you to think about the kind of resilience that you have, how you manage stress, the way that you process stress. Is this the right job for you? Is this not the right job for you? Because you should not be crying every day at the office. I have seen way too many videos where women are crying on TikTok, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and they are so stressed out because the management that they are under or the team that they are working with has made them have this emotional reaction. Crying is always okay. Crying is never a bad thing. It is a bad thing, though, if you feel like you are not being treated as the human being that you need to be treated as, and you are allowed to ask to be treated like a human being. There is a point, though, where you need to let them be dicks, where you need to let them do their thing, and you need to make the decision for yourself how you want to handle it, because nobody is benefiting from your tears at work. No one is benefiting from you sticking in this tornado cycle of fear and anxiety and tears if you're not doing anything about it. So you definitely have that agency. I want you to remember that. You absolutely have the agency. Is it bad to cry at work? No, just don't become characterized by it. Now, if you don't feel like you know how to cope, you feel like your stress is way too high at the office, I have a couple different videos. I will drop those in the description box below, which is a good like back to school moment for you on how to build your confidence, how to build that resilience for yourself, because I believe in you. I know that you can do it, and I have the resources just for it. Okay, I have more questions that I would love to answer. I had a couple even pop into my head as I was recording this episode, but like I said at the beginning, if you have any other questions, please drop them into the comments. I have a feeling this will be a recurring video because I want to help as many of you as possible. We all deserve to live authentically and freely. And if you want homework, because we always end with a couple of action items in our good tech way, if you want a little bit of an action item for what you can do in order to really start managing your mental health at work, then here are my suggestions. Number one, book your Big Sister Chat. I don't know if I'm going to call it Big Sister Chat, but we're going to call it that for now. Go to the description box. It's a free 30-minute session with me where we can talk through anything you want to talk through, any problem, any question, any concern. You're having a hard conversation with your boss coming up that you want to brainstorm. You're writing your CV, you're writing your cover letter, you don't know what to do in your job. Is it toxic? Is it not toxic? Work-life balance, like anything you want to chat through. I'm your girl. I'm going to put it there. The link is going to be in the description, and I would love to hear from you. The second thing that I would go ahead and do is outline how you want to work. Like really start to dig into how you want to work and how you manage your anxiety. Like what coping mechanisms do you currently have? Now, I actually have a free template available to make it super easy for you. This is called the user manual, and you can go and find it again in the description box, but it's a set of Notion templates that is very free and very ready to use for you to go through, fill out how you like to work, who you are, what kind of person you are, and that'll just lead you through to better communicate with your manager if you feel like they're triggering you unnecessarily, if they don't even know that you're triggering you, if they don't even know this is how you want to build your work-life balance. This is a great way to communicate with them. And if anything, it'll just give you more insights into who you are, what you like, so you can better communicate it even in person if you don't want to send it over to whoever you're working with. That brings us to the very end of today's episode. Thank you so much for sticking around. If you haven't already left a rating, please go ahead and do so if you are listening on any of the podcast channels. It helps so much more than you know. And if you are listening to me on YouTube, please go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. I would love to hear from you, number one, but number two, all of this helps make sure that we get the message out to more people. We start the conversation around building your mental health at work. We answer the deep questions that no one really wants to talk about, but also you get access to this every other week on my channel. So make sure you go ahead and stick around for exactly that. My name's Regan, and I am so very happy that you are here. I will see you next time. Thanks, everyone.